everyone! I have been so excited to make this dress. This is probably my favorite silhouette. It's just so cute. I have a feeling I'll be making several variations of this dress, probably one for each season. So I definitely want to make a copy of the pattern so I have all of my alterations ready to go for next time. I'm too impatient to make a fit sample though, so I'm going to check the measurements of the pattern pieces against my own measurements. Check the back shoulder width, the top of the shoulder to the bottom of the waist, the sleeve length plus cuff, and of course the finished waist measurement. I'm a bit of a pear or triangle shape, so I'm going to cut the bodice and sleeves in one size and the waistband and skirt in a size up. I'm tracing out the size I want for each pattern piece of view C and the sleeve and cuffs of view A. The most important thing on a pattern is the grain line, so be sure you've marked it on all of the pieces that aren't obvious. I like to work with a 1/2 inch seam allowances, so I'm trimming all of the seams back 1/8 of an inch. Based on my measurements, I want to add 1.5 inches to the sleeve length. This pattern is made for someone who's 5'5" or 5'6", so I'm going to add 1.5 inches at the bodice length for safety, which includes the front yoke and the front left extension piece. This pattern doesn't have pockets. I'll have to add them in myself. Instead of doing the inseam pockets that I usually do, I'm going to do a little slashed entry. Luckily, the gathering on the front skirt doesn't go past this mark, so I'll draw a line a little to the left of that, down about 6 inches, so my hand has plenty of room to get in there. Then trace this edge of the skirt out onto a new piece of pattern paper and transfer the pocket opening line and notches too. I want the pocket to be about 6 inches deeper than the opening, and just a few inches wider. I just eyeball it and then go in with rulers to true the lines. I also added a 1/4 inch seam allowance at the pocket bag edge. Now cut the pocket out of 2 pieces of pattern paper. One of them is the pocket backing. The one with the opening drawn on it is the pocket bag lining. Draw a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the opening on that and the front skirt, then cut away the excess. Line up the pocket pieces and mark the same grain line as the skirt. Also, mark on the backing where the opening is. Now I'm ready to cut my fabrics. I have this awesome metallic gold skull-printed cotton from Joann's, and this slinky, lightweight polyester jersey that has a weird cellular pattern that's almost reptilian. I've machine washed and dried both of these to pre-shrink the cotton and get any excess dye out of the jersey. The skull fabric is going to butt up together at center front, so I'm going to match the print. It's so easy to do. We need to find center front, which is where the seam allowance starts. I'm putting that right over the center of the skull. Then mark something on the pattern that's easy to line up to. Here I'm using the top of the skull. I marked where it hits on the pattern, so when I flip the pattern piece over, line center front up on the center of another skull. Then I can put my mark right at the top of this skull. So when they're sewn, these skulls should butt right up together. I did that for the front yoke and the front waist or midriff pieces. For the pieces that say cut 4 or cut 2 on the fold, the extra pieces are lining, so I'm going to cut those out of a plain black cotton. Except for the collar, I'll do that out of the skull fabric for both sides. Now on to the jersey pieces. I'm always concerned about yardage, so I'm marking all of the pieces out on the back of the fabric. The skirt pieces are too wide to be cut with the fabric folded in half, so mark each side of the pattern as it's cut so you don't cut the same side twice. As I was marking the back skirt, I wondered why it was so much smaller than the front, and realized there's no fullness there. It seems weird to me to have gathers at the bodice, but no gathers at the skirt, so I slashed the back skirt right down the middle and spread it about 4 inches at the waist to 0 at the hem. I taped paper to fill in the gap, marked the new center grain line, and went back to marking, then cutting everything out. Now I have some scraps of my fabrics and some scraps of interfacing. I like to test my two favorite interfacings, tricot and weft. I get both of these at B Black & Sons. I fuse little pieces together and see how the drape changes. Are they as stable as I want them? Are they too stiff? Is it not stiff enough? How does it take a fold? Is it too thick once the seam allowance folds back? I've decided to go with the weft for the skull fabric and the tricot, which is lighter weight, for the jersey. I cut most of the interfacing pieces the same as the pattern and fused them. For the sleeve cuffs and the left extension piece, I folded the pattern in half to cut the interfacing. I only want the interfacing on the front of the garment. Having it in the lining on those pieces is just going to add bulk and stiffness that's not necessary. My fabric has a directional print, so I'm making sure I'm fusing the correct half, since I can't flip it over if it's wrong. I want to give the pocket openings just a little bit of support, so I drew a line 3/4 inch from the pocket opening and cut it out of tricot. Now I can fuse this to the front skirt to help stabilize this bias edge and keep my knit fabric from stretching. At last, all of the pieces are cut and prepped. Just prepping to sew takes a long time, but it's so worth it in the end to have a custom garment. Let's start sewing in the next video.